Now Takshin and I have had an opportunity to talk a little bit about what we would like to cover this morning. And I will begin with a discussion about what is refuge and introduce us to the three levels of refuge, or the three different motivations for seeking refuge. And then I'll focus on the first one of those. Rinpoche has talked about, the three primary reasons we take refuge are out of fear, out of faith, and compassion. And so I'll be talking more about this first one. And I wanted to share a quote with you to begin. Geshe Wangyal states that going for refuge is the basis of everything, just as the earth is the foundation of all existence. And so this quote suggests something quite profound about refuge. And over the course of our discussion this morning, I think this will kind of come to light a little bit more. And I know for me, investigating and studying and learning more about refuge has helped me to come to a greater appreciation about what this is and what it means. And that I know in one of Now Takshin's prior teachings, she had talked about how understanding refuge is like, the onion, and peeling away the layers and layers and layers, that we can gain deeper and deeper insights and layers and levels of understanding about this important issue. So to begin, I wanted to just have us think about, what does the term refuge itself mean? So how would you define refuge? What does the term mean, the word mean? Lapa?
A place of safety.
A place of safety. Okay, good. Yeah. So it might be in a storm that we get under a bridge. I was driving recently in a snowstorm, and, anytime I would come under an overpass, I was like, oh, I just felt so much safer because, the onslaught wasn't there. So I felt refuge under that bridge, so the sense of safety from something dangerous.
I saw your post on that too, that you were saying refuge the whole way.
The whole way. I was traveling back from Illinois Friday night, and it was snowing and blowing, very difficult to see, and it felt really unsafe. And I didn't really have many options, because it felt unsafe just to pull off, that wasn't sure people could even see me, and it was slippery. And I was worried, if I pulled off, I might actually go off into a ditch, as others had done. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't anywhere to spend the night, and it was sub-zero out. So it wasn't like I could just stop. So I felt like I had to keep going. And I said refuge. I took refuge the entire drive. And Rinpoche has said, some practitioners go on 3-year retreat, and all they do on retreat is take refuge over and over and over. And so that really helped me to feel that sense of safety and protection as I was driving. Anything else that it means, the word refuge means? So a place of safety, of protection? Jungme?
To me, before even going to the level of sort of safety, sort of more literally,
Mm-hmm.
I think how people use it is often like a shelter. You really listen to
Yeah.
a refuge
Yeah.
from the storm.
A shelter, yeah. So the dictionary definition says that refuge is a shelter from pursuit or danger, a person, course, or thing resorted to in difficulties. Protection or shelter as from danger or hardship, or a source of help, relief, or comfort in times of trouble. Thupten Dundrup, who's an Australian monk, he's been practicing for many years, and he teaches around the world. I had the fortune of listening to a teaching he gave on refuge, and he says that we think of taking refuge as a Buddhist concept, but in fact, and it does have very important meanings in Buddhist context that we'll talk about, but in fact, we've been taking refuge all our lives. And he says that this begins with, as a baby, taking refuge in our mother, who seems like the perfect refuge because we're hungry and she feeds us, and she changes our diaper, and she holds us when we feel afraid, and she's really a wonderful source of refuge for us. But as we get older, we begin to realize that she actually can't provide for all of our needs or offer safety in all instances, right? And so as we enter into our adolescent years, we take refuge in other things. Like, what are some things that adolescents take refuge in? Friends, yeah, friends become very important. That, as an adolescent, I remember, if I had a problem and I was really worried about something, I would call my friends. I wouldn't go to my mother. I would call my friends, right? What else? What else do adolescents take refuge in often in our society? Music, yeah, just getting completely lost and feeling like music will, kind of support us and heal us and nurture us and help us feel like we're understood because the music's reflecting our own emotional experience of life. Yeah. Anything else? Partying, alcohol, drugs is often a big source of refuge for teenagers, and we see actually a lot of problems that develop around that. So alcohol or drugs. And then, as we get older, many, and adolescents too, we take refuge in sex and that feeling of being connected with others intimately, seeking refuge in this way as a way of feeling pleasure and kind of minimizing our unhappiness and feeling like this is going to meet our needs. I knew a woman who came here on a job interview many years ago, and while she was here on a job interview, she slept with one of the people she was interviewing with, and it just is like she had such a need to seek refuge and intimacy in that way, and when she's stressed, that's what she did. And you can imagine how seeking refuge in this way can be very challenging, and yet she thought that this is what was the indicated thing. So refuge in relationships, many people feel like if only I could find the perfect mate, then I'll be happy. They'll protect me, they'll help me feel less, I won't feel alone, I'll have the joy of being with someone that loves me. We take refuge in food. I still take refuge in food. I take refuge in chocolate. Or so, I'll be working at my
chocolate's
desk.
a good refuge.
And it's
Don't diss chocolate.
this feeling of, I'm having a little discomfort. I think, a piece of cake or a piece of chocolate will help me feel better, Money. Money is a huge source of refuge in our culture, that we feel that if only I make enough money, I won't have problems. I'll be able to buy my way out of any problem that there is. It will protect me from the ills of old age, and if I have money and good insurance, that everything will be fine. And this is a challenge, but it's. I certainly know many people who have taken refuge in money, and they experience myriad forms of suffering still. A dear friend or a friend of mine who is extremely wealthy, she's had 5 dear friends commit suicide, all from this very wealthy crowd of people. And so, all pursuing this idea that, more money will bring me, this protection, this happiness, but there's tremendous suffering experienced amongst her circle. We think if we have enough laws and police and legal systems in place that we will have refuge, that we'll have a perfect society that will care for one another, and that people will be free from harm and danger, but yet problems still remain. We can't legislate enough to prevent people from harming one another, right? So we discover that these many forms of refuge that we've attempted to rely on, and even all of them combined, So we got our perfect mate, and we have our house, and we have all this money, and we have it all. And we realize that even all of these forms of outer refuge combined don't completely solve our problems.
And it's interesting you mention this, because now the big issue in this country is guns and semi-automatics, and people must be afraid. I can't think of any reason they are so determined that they have the right to these unbelievably powerful guns is fear. They're very afraid.
Yeah, so they take refuge in gun ownership, and then the feeling is that, well, if just everyone had guns, then we'll be safe. So when there's a shooting in a school, the answer isn't let's get rid of guns. The answer is let's give everybody guns. Let's give all the teachers guns, so that then we'll be safe. But we're taking refuge in this
Very dangerous.
unstable form of safety. It's an unstable form. So putting all our faith into these ordinary forms of refuge and having them fail us time and time again often leaves us feeling a profound sense of difficulty trusting, right? Because we might trust, our beloved partner to be our refuge, and then they're unfaithful to us or they die. And then we have, we can develop this feeling of mistrust. And many people don't feel safe and have problems with trust in our society. They feel like they've been hurt by others, and they have trouble in relationships and trouble seeing the good in others, and trouble in developing relationships because they don't trust, and trouble accepting advice from others. Rinpoche says that many Buddhists and many new Buddhists are really left with a dilemma of how to trust in the Buddha and trust the Dharma from a shaky and underdeveloped trust system. She describes how the Buddha actually had serious trust issues with his own father. He had, she had this beautiful illustration about how here's someone who had this incredibly comfortable life. His father wanted to shelter him from suffering in the world and protect him from that. And he deliberately created an environment where he was protected from that. But the Buddha began to question and become really suspicious, and he came to understand that there was something inside of him bubbling up saying, wait a minute, I think there's more. There's something not right about this. This doesn't feel safe. And he left. He left his family life. That, for any ordinary person who's feeling like I'm going to find refuge in wealth and power and fame and family and relationships, they wouldn't have left. But something was bubbling up inside of him and saying, I don't trust this. This isn't real. And so he ran away to find out what was, and just said basically, I want to know the truth. So he left his family. And so for some individuals, they begin to have this awakening, this kind of like, something's not quite right. I just don't know that I can trust ordinary refuge. And many years ago, our son was 10 years old, and he had the great fortune to have an appointment with Rinpoche. And I believe as a result of her blessings that he started to gain some of these insights. And one day he said to me, he's about 10 and a half, and he said, Mom, can I talk to you? I said, sure, what's up? He said, I'm feeling really funny, Mom, kind of sad. And I said, what's going on? And he said, well, I used to think that you and Dad would always be there, and then I could always rely on you. And I'm starting to understand that that's not true. And he was starting to have these realizations about how he could not take refuge in us, that we would not be able to protect him from true sources of suffering, that he could only experience that kind of safety from higher being. And so as practitioners, we could have that conversation with him and actually rejoice with him that he was having these understandings at an early age so that he could cultivate them and have them be more firmly rooted in his mind so that he could find a better source of refuge. So this first aspect of refuge is acknowledging that we don't feel as safe as we could or should. He was beginning to realize he couldn't feel as safe as he could or should just because we were his parents, right? And this fear as motivation for taking refuge is saying, oh my gosh, I have a problem. This is what Rinpoche says. She says, oh my gosh, I've got a problem. What am I going to do about it? Okay. And so, we have many problems. We still suffer. We still have shortcomings. We have disturbing states of mind that overwhelm us. We try and try and try. And we don't know how to solve these dilemmas. They get worse. Okay? We have anxiety. We don't know how to get rid of it. Chocolate doesn't take it away. Drugs don't take it away. Right? But many people view this problem as outside themselves. And Rinpoche says that, waking up to our own shortcomings and wanting to change is a huge part of our growing up. And, being able to take responsibility for our own shortcomings is really an important part of growing up. And she said, sadly, many people wait until they're at the end of their life to realize that they have lived their life from a place of fear, or that they have blamed others, and that they really needed to take responsibility. And it's really too late. It's really hard to do something about it at that point. But I know many people, I know for myself, ways in which I've kind of operated from fear, or, a woman friend had said to me that, she had been in a job for many years, and she didn't want to leave it because she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to find anything better, but she hated her job. And then, she had been in a relationship, an abusive relationship. She didn't want to leave it because she was afraid of being alone. And then over time, she was able to kind of work through some of that and, get out of that relationship. And, she lost her job and was forced to find another job. And then she's at a place in her life where she's saying, I know what I should be doing, but I don't know if I have the courage to do it. So she knew that there was, but this fear was holding her back. And often this sense of, if only others would do this, I'd be okay. And Buddhist psychology and philosophy is offering us a lot of methods for a lot of people. Rinpoche talks about how there are some wonderful teachings on mindfulness and a lot of the cognitive behavioral therapies that are actually, if you look at them, they're based on many principles from Buddhist psychology that work really well. They're highly efficacious for helping people change their mind, to take responsibility for themselves, to begin to bring about healing in one's thinking, so that one can get to a different place than where we're not blaming others. If we fail to take responsibility for our own actions and be really honest with ourselves, Rinpoche says we continue to play the same song. And the song is like this. It goes, this issue is other people. They don't trust me. I do all that I can. I try and try and try. People don't appreciate me. People don't understand me. This sort of thing. But at some point, we fundamentally have to realize that the root of all of these problems is our own fear. And refuge offered is based, this is a quote from Rinpoche, refuge offered is based on resolving fear and begin to understand that ordinary refuge, refuge offered is based on resolving fear, which means that there has to be offering of safety, but that offering of safety has to be bigger than your fear. And so as we begin to realize this fear, we begin to understand ordinary refuge will not resolve it. And we realize we need to take refuge in something that is perfect, unbetrayable, something pure, something totally reliable. And this is where the 3 jewels come in. So the 3 jewels, when we say in Buddhism we take refuge in the 3 jewels, we're referring to the Buddha. Buddha means enlightened, awakened, or omniscient one. The Buddha, enlightened mind is completely reliable. The Buddha has purified all defilements and developed all good qualities. The Buddha started as an ordinary person and traveled a path to perfection, modeling for us what we also can do. At our basis, we have Buddha nature. And so the Buddha is totally free from obscurations and suffering and complete with all good qualities. And they say that the Buddha is like the skilled physician who has success in treating all diseases, because he's cured himself of all diseases. But the Buddha said, I cannot do but point the way. Okay? So if we don't take the medicine, the doctor is helpless. And so the medicine is the Dharma, the actual medicine. And the Dharma is the entire body of teachings of the Buddha and the associated teachings of the path. And this is the actual object of refuge, because it's actually the medicine that will allow us to become free of suffering. So the Dharma is actually the entire path from here to perfection. Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche says that when you go for refuge in the Dharma, it means that you go for refuge to the truth. So for example, that all things are impermanent, that each one of us will die, that every action has a result. So going for that is going for refuge in the Dharma. So these are just small examples from the vast body of teachings. So we study, we contemplate, we gain insights, and the Dharma comes alive. And the 3rd jewel is the Sangha. The Sangha is like the healthy and compassionate nurse, the healthy helpers of the Buddha who will help us take the medicine. Khandra Rinpoche says that it is into the Sangha of accomplished bodhisattvas that we take refuge. They're most skillful. Okay? So it includes all the great masters who have walked the path and exemplified the realizations through their own understanding and experience, who have studied the Dharma, who have become the Dharma. And Rinpoche explains that there are also bodhisattvas still in human form who work with great enthusiasm and are very active in this world, who are also objects of refuge. Okay? And we can look to the Sangha of the community that we belong to also as helpers in supporting one another and requesting time for sharing, and studying the Dharma together and teaching one another. So the first level of refuge is a means to address our fear. And the challenge for many of us beginning Buddhism is the absence of trust. Okay? And Rinpoche talks about how, we kind of, she says we have fear, faith, and compassion, and that a lot of us we want to go for refuge through compassion. And I won't go into this because I know Taikshin's going to be talking about it.
Thank you.
But that we really want to go through the front door, through this place of going for refuge, understanding that the fear is the basis of our problem.
In fact, she says if we skip it, if we try to go through compassion and skip, refuge based on fear to alleviate our fear, it's not going to work. It will fall apart.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'll put that in there.
Thank you.
Now
Good.
it's said.
Yeah. So the first level of Buddhist refuge is a practice that is working toward reducing generalized fear and anxiety. And once our natural fears have been allayed, we then feel happier and safer, and we're in a better position to delve more deeply into the Dharma from a different place. And she said we also need the counterweight of safety of refuge inside before we can trust on the outside. That we can't just become, this trusting person. She used this analogy of, have you ever just gotten fed up with yourself and said, okay, I'm just going to trust everybody. I'm tired of not trusting people. I'm just going to trust everybody. But that quickly falls apart because then they don't, we have bad experiences and then we like, oh, I shouldn't have trusted them again, because we don't have that inner safety. So she talks about having the ballast of refuge inside in the heart that many times, people think, well, I'll go for refuge to something outside there and I'll just let the light pour down on me and fill me with blessings. She said, but it has to come from in here. We need that inner stability in the heart center, the feeling, the heavy, safe feeling of being inside that can only happen in the interior. And I have one final quote I want to share with you before I turn over to Taikshin. It's kind of a really interesting perspective that Thupten Dondrup shared about this inner refuge and also related to the Dharma. He says, when we take refuge, when we do refuge, we become an inner being. We make conscious recognition that the source of suffering is not out there, it is within me. When we first take refuge, that is what we recognize. The moment we understand that the real cause of my suffering is not out there, but within me, and the real cause of happiness is within me, as soon as we really understand that at some level, we have refuge. We become an inner being. We realize that everything good and bad is within us, and we have to work from within to cultivate the garden of our own mind. When we become an inner being, we become a practitioner of cause and effect. We see that is the key to everything. And I like this quote because it helps us see the Dharma, the teachings also are within, and that's what will get us where we want to go.